Welcome, everybody. I'm Adam Markell, co-founder of WORKWELL, and I'm thrilled that you are all joining us. We are an organization committed to creating healthier and happier places to work. In fact, I've spent most of my career focused on what it takes for leaders and individual contributors to be at their best, even in the most challenging and uncertain and complex times, like the ones we're all living in right now, including writing 2 #1 research-based best-selling books on change, resilience, and business culture. The first one was called Pivot, and the latest one is Change Proof: How to Leverage the Power of Uncertainty and Adversity and Complexity as catalysts for our long-term growth. I think if we want to meet the moment right now, we truly have to understand the moment. And our research of more than 7,000 business leaders globally tells us one thing that you probably suspect, and that is that people are exhausted. People are so tired from all the change, and many of them, including senior level leaders, are feeling isolated and disconnected as a result. And if we're paying attention right now, we can see that the signs of burnout are everywhere, and mental health is on a decline. And if we're going to do something about that, then we truly have to meet people where they are, help them to become more agile, more adaptable in the face of constant change. In other words, to be more resilient, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually speaking, which is exactly why we've invited one of our contributors, a wonderful person that I've known for many, many years right now, a magnificent facilitator and a thought leader, to share some ideas with all of you on how to create better relationships. I'm going to share a little bit more about her in just a second here, and then we're going to dive right into it. Her name is April Beyer. And April, dubbed the best of the best by Dr. Phil, is a leading relationship expert, a keynote speaker, and a creator of the innovative matching platform called Level Connections. Her proprietary process, known as the Myers-Briggs for the Heart, helps people to understand their core needs, values, and behaviors to create lasting relationships. And again, when we think about that through line of how we create healthier places, happier places even to work, we cannot do it thinking that we're going to do it alone. We have to understand that this is literally and figuratively a team sport, that we have to go it with each other, and we have to have each other's backs. And so it is my great honor, it's truly a privilege to invite April to share some of her insights and ideas with all of you. We're going to do that for about 40 minutes, with about 5 minutes at the end just to wrap things up with a bit of Q&A. So stay tuned and enjoy. The stage is yours, April. Thank you so much for being here and for serving the WORKWELL community.
Wow, Adam, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here and, of course, to be working with the WORKWELL team. I'm so happy we're all together because today we're going to talk about, I think it's my all-time favorite topic. It's relatability. We're going to talk about how it inspires more employee engagement, why emotional curiosity is the key to building strong workplace relationships, and why it's needed now more than ever before. I'm also going to share a few practical strategies and a quick little exercise that you can start doing immediately today with your teams. We're also going to dive into what you can do as a leader to protect your organization from the market pressures and these unprecedented changes that we are all currently witnessing right now. But during our conversation today, and I'm really hoping it's going to feel like that, I'm going to be asking you a few questions. You'll be able to put those into the chat. But as I share, if there's anything that comes up for you, a thought, a question, a comment, please feel free to do that. I'll try to stop and answer. And if not, hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end where I can unmute your lines and directly speak with you. So before we get started on all of that, all right, who's thinking, what does a matchmaker know about workplace leadership? I get it. It's okay. It's a different career and it may not feel relatable to you at the moment. But let's just compare our worlds for a sec. For starters, we are in the commitment game. Your success depends on finding the right people for the job and making sure they stay with you, right? That's what I do. You need to help your teams build connection and rapport and trust. And this is the main focus of my work. You want to avoid the corporate divorce, and I want to avoid the marital divorce. And contrary to popular belief, and I'm so used to this, matchmaking isn't just this business of setting up romantic, fun dinner dates. Oh gosh, I wish it were that easy. I think I would have a lot less wrinkles on my face. I've always thought that matchmaking isn't a real sufficient description of what I do, because what I really do is I study human behavior. Relationships are at the core of everything we do in life, and yet, funny enough, they're the most elusive thing known to man. And unfortunately, most people leave relationships to chance or fate. They mistakenly think that it's in the stars, it's either there or it's not, pure luck. But I'm happy to tell you that just like chemistry, great relationships are not found in the stars. They're created. And they're created with intention. And for 25 years in this career, yes, it has been that long. I like to say I was doing this, in the covered wagon days before country was cool, for those of you that remember that. I've been studying what creates connection, what inspires relationships, what motivates people to not just stay in relationships, but how do they thrive in them? Because we all know that commitment isn't enough. Whether it's a marriage license, an employee contract, it's not enough. The quality of our relationships is actually what creates the loyalty and the longevity. And we all want to work with the people that we know, we like, and we trust. But unfortunately, we don't know each other well enough at work yet. The line between work and love relationships is actually shorter than you think. During my interviews and my work with clients, I surprisingly hear a lot about the lack of connection at work, and therefore the need for love outside of work is even greater. I mean, talk about pressure. These laundry lists that I hear on a day-to-day basis are long. In my office, I always have a saying when I see these lists of, desired attributes, we have a saying that says, "Would you like fries with that?" So earlier in my career, when I just got started, I remember I got an email from a potential client who wanted to hire me as his matchmaker. And he was this brilliant MIT PhD scientist, total academic. And in his email, he mentioned that he had been focused on work for many years. He was 40, and that he was at a point where he felt very isolated and he was exhausted. He said he was disconnected from his work environment and felt like connection in general was lacking in his life. And he thought, I'm ready for this next relationship of my dreams. Now, these usual calls that we would have in those days, they were about an hour. It was an hour initial phone call. But this guy only allowed us to schedule 30 minutes. I mean, really, 30 minutes? This guy wants to find the love of his life and he's going to give me 30 seconds to do this. So I started out, I was doing my typical interview questions. What do you want? What are you looking for? And I was getting like one word short answers. It was like pulling teeth with this guy. He wasn't giving me anything. And I was trying to find the thread that could connect us, but we actually had nothing in common. He was valedictorian of his high school. I skated by with like a B minus average, and I got kicked out of my chemistry class for asking one too many questions and frustrating my teacher and asking things like, "Am I going to dissect frogs when I get older?" Yes, I'm old enough to remember that too. He went to MIT. I went to an art school in New York. He was raised in poverty to a single mom. He was the only child. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood with both my parents and my 3 annoying brothers. But I had to figure out how to build a quick relationship with this guy in our limited time. And it was that day that I came up with a formula for relatability. Because I don't know what it feels like to attend MIT. but I do know hard work and sacrifice. And I don't know what it would be like to grow up in his beloved South Africa, but we connected on shared values and the love of our moms who couldn't have been more different. And by the end of our call, he commented, wow, I have never spoken this much. I have never been on the phone this long. He said, I usually don't have time or interest. And I love my mother, but I don't even talk to her for more than 10 minutes on the phone. You really get me, April. I feel like I can relate with you. But I'm curious about you. When you think of relatability, what comes to mind? And this is something where I'm going to ask for your participation to just write into the chat. You can do more than one. Just work with me here. What are the attributes that you think of when you think of relatability? Maybe think of someone that you know who you think is really relatable. It could be a friend, a colleague, a neighbor, a family member, anybody that you can think of that would have these attributes of being a relatable person. Can we put those in the chat for me? Okay, I see common interests, somebody who's likable. Adam says, Randy, yeah, common interests. Children make people relatable. That's interesting, Randy. Please give me more, as many as you can. Likable comes up a lot, Adam. Alma, understandable. That's beautiful. So relatable people, they're easy to understand. Is that where you're going with that? Mark, hey there. Shared experiences. Trey, trust. Yes. Okay, great. Alma, you confirmed that. It's about they're easy to understand. These are all wonderful. Yes. Before we get into, what it really is, and it's a lot of these things. Yes, interested and interesting. I get it. There's also a lot of preconceived ideas about relatability and myths. So let's get into these before we actually dive into what it really is for us. So a lot of people think that relatability is when we have that shared experience and that family history with somebody, right? It's that familiar feeling. Maybe we share the same socioeconomic background, the same level of education. We have the same kind of parenting growing up. So therefore, we're relatable with each other, right? It's easy to know each other. We're not judged in these environments. But here's the problem with relying on shared experiences as something that creates relatability, is that our world stays small if we only relate to the people who are our reflection in the mirror. Because relying on shared experiences and family history is just too much of a variable, and it's not reliable. And as we go along here, I'm going to tell you why it's actually not profitable if you're relying on this in business. So I'm curious, how many of you have been taught from a really young age that you had to find common ground with somebody in order to make friends? Anybody? You could say yes. Deanna, me. Yes, a lot of us were taught that, right? It's like, go find something that you want to do. That's what our parents told us. You want to go make a friend? Go get on your bike and go find somebody that wants to do that with you. And yes, so Deanna's saying the first rule of rapport building is you find something that you have in common. These are not wrong. These are actually true. These are really good things that we are all taught and we should still do to this day. But we rely on it too much because common interests are a really good start, but we just can't stop there. Not when it comes to the workplace, because it's actually what's underneath our interests and passions that connects us. And I'll share you a little secret with you. I actually, in my matchmaking business, I actually don't match on interests. I don't even care. What I match on is the values and the emotions that people get to express when they're participating in their interests and their passions. Is that confusing or does that make sense? I'll explain it to you for a second. So let's say we, all of us here, let's say we all love sailing, right? Does that make us more relatable with one another? doesn't mean necessarily that we're going to get along and that we're going to work well together, that we're going to like and respect each other or feel protective of one another. No, not really. It just gives us something in common. Yes, exactly, Trey, not at all. It's a nice to have list, right? What makes us relatable with one another is what is driving our passions. And that's where we find our connection and our bond, because it's deeper than the activity. And really quick, while we're on this subject, offsite meetings, retreats, things that we do for work that are time consuming and costly, they might be fun and they might have a temporary impact on work connections, but it doesn't do anything for creating the lasting bonds of relatability. Because without guidance and a container for connection, we naturally revert back to those familiar patterns of connection, maybe from like experiences from our high school social dynamics. We all remember these. These might be some like flashbacks for some of us. You know, the cliques. We had the, who did we have? We had the math nerds, the popular girls, the jocks, the cheerleaders, the theater geeks. Hello. The quite, you know, the shy kids, maybe the loners. And then we do that as adults. We stick to our groups and we don't unite, even if you put us all together in one location. And it's a reminder that connection isn't always an intuitive act. It requires intention, effort, and stepping out of our comfort zones to build the bridges with the people that are outside of our usual circles. And our third myth, this is the good one. Relatability is not about confidence or popularity. It isn't reserved just for leaders and extroverts. It's in all of us. Because perceived popularity and confidence could actually work against someone. Because for these people, it might be a little bit more difficult to show their real selves because they don't want to, you know, let you see them sweat. And in doing so, they become more remote, more removed from the rest of us, and therefore not relatable at all, right? As a leader, you might even think that you need to convey a certain power and confidence, but what if you feel the opposite on the inside? I'm going to talk about the risks of you doing that in a minute. But confident and friendly people are often relatable, right? That's what we associate. You see somebody relatable, they're friendly, they're warm, they're engaging. True. But there's so much going on there that meets the eye. Because I'm happy to tell you that you could be the shyest person in the room and still be one of the most relatable people in the room. So let's talk about the truth of relatability. Here it is. The truth of relatability is it's your ability to make emotional connections. Does anyone think this isn't easy? Do you struggle with making emotional connections? And we're specifically today talking about in your work environment. Is this easy? Is this difficult? And if it isn't easy, can I ask why not? Because the reason why the word easy is in here, and I really want to focus on that, is because, drum roll, you're already doing it. You do this with your close friends, your family members. You do it in your personal and your love relationships. So I don't need to teach you how to be relatable. I just need to give you a reason to continue your relatability so that you're seamless throughout your day. Because if you're already doing it in your, let's say your off hours or your personal life, that means you already have the skill set. You just haven't given yourself permission. We've been told that maybe it's not appropriate or it's not necessary in the workplace. So we don't seek this level of connection with people that we don't know or that we don't think we're going to have a future with. We hold back. But here's my philosophy. You don't wait to get to know people. You seek to know people. So before we get to current or potential challenges for your teams, I want to talk to you specifically, you as a leader, because I read so much and I hear a lot about what leaders need to do. And it's just, again, it's more work, more responsibility. But I want to take care of you just for a minute. What happens to you specifically when relatability isn't prioritized, because we're going to get to your teams in a minute. You're isolated. You're all alone. If your teams can't relate with you, they won't understand you, what you need, and most importantly, why you need it. Because your why is why we get behind you. That's what makes us want to commit to you. And it means added stress, less knowledge of what's really going on within your company. You don't trust. Because when we don't know people and they don't know us, we don't trust them. And when we don't trust people, what do? Feel free to throw that in the chat. What do we do when we don't trust people? Nothing gets done. Trey's saying no connection. Yes, all of that is true. Disconnect, Randy says. I'll tell you what we also do. We micromanage. Yeah, we micromanage people when we don't know and we trust them. That's human. I'll tell you what, I'm really good at micromanagement, but I hate it. I don't like who I am when I micromanage. So if I ever fall into the trap of micromanagement, I know that I haven't done my job of connecting and knowing people. Because when we're relatable, we're transparent. And that has this beautiful way of getting people on board with your mission. And you can't inspire engagement with your teams if you're not showing up as a relatable leader, because it all begins with you. So let's talk about a problem that you're facing right now. I'll zoom in on this so you can grab this QR code. This Gallup article is literally, it's recent. I think it's from December 2024. So just a couple months ago. It shows employees across America are increasingly detached from their jobs. They're looking for new opportunities at the highest rate, you guys, since 2015. While overall satisfaction with their employer is at a record low. And yet, as we all remember, unlike the Great Resignation, frustrated employees are struggling to leap to a new employer because they can't afford to quit. Instead, they just feel stuck with their discontent. And this is the big one, they're being more quiet about it. And that is going to lead to a toxic environment. Gallup refers to this shift as the Great Detachment. For employers, this means maybe your turnover numbers may have slowed. Employee productivity is still a big concern, and we have to consider that future talent loss is a hidden organizational risk. So what's interesting is going from the Great Resignation to the Great Detachment, we went from complaining to complacency. My mother always says, when you're in partnership and relationship and someone goes quiet, someone goes dark, someone becomes complacent, that's when you're in trouble. When you're fighting, you're still in it. But when they go quiet, you are looking at the end of your relationship. And all of this is resulting in low engagement. I mean, you can clearly see here that employee satisfaction is continuing to decline, and those who are looking for jobs is increasing. And by the way, this is actually higher than we experienced during the COVID pandemic. This makes me more sad than anything because we are truly in a loneliness epidemic. Check out this HBR article. You can see this 1 in 5 employees, we're like, that's a lot of people, right? That's something we have to pay attention to. So with remote work, we have more freedom, but we're more disconnected than ever before. And across the board, we see tremendous isolation and loneliness. And when we all started working remotely, I actually working with my clients, because I can't talk to my clients about love and relationships without talking about work. They literally go hand in hand. And I noticed that when we started kind of moving away from in-person work, my clients started second guessing themselves. They got more insecure. They weren't as self-assured as they once were. They doubted more, and they needed more basic advice on creating connection. And it was as if everyone lost their relationship skills when they lost their workplace relationships. So if we're one big lonely out of practice bunch, we have to ask ourselves, what are we dedicated to changing? How do we fix it? And even if we do go back to the office, this kind of level of loneliness isn't going to magically go away because it's deeper than just not seeing people at work. As we all know, you could be in a crowded room and still be lonely. You could live in the middle of Manhattan and still be lonely because mere proximity does not ever equal connection. And like any relationship, some people, when they experience loneliness, they typically look outside of their current circumstance or their relationship for change or for comfort. It's a common human response. But it isn't just isolation and turnover, it's market pressures that keep you awake at night. So what do you do to fight it? Well, you can build strong workplace relationships as a shield against competitive job offers that are trying to take your best people. You can focus on creating an environment for people to make these genuine connections that we're talking about today so they aren't feeling so lonely and isolated in or out of the office. Because employees who feel this level of connection are 3 times more likely to stay even when they're offered higher salaries elsewhere. So maybe think of relatability as your immunity. I'd like to know from you, how is employee engagement, or the lack of it, showing up in your organization right now? What problems are you currently seeing? So if you're seeing employee engagement decline, how is it showing up for your team? What's happening for you right now? Are you not seeing the energy? Is there not enough productivity? Go ahead and put that in the chat if you're able, or if you're hearing about it from other people. Do you see a problem out there? Okay, great. Thank you. Here are 3 examples that I'm seeing in my work. The number one is lack of empathy and understanding. And when employees cite a lack of empathy and understanding as a reason for not feeling engaged at work, it means they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't feel valued. But it goes much deeper than just empathizing with people about what they're going through at work, because the best leaders care about the people in a holistic way. You know, I had an employee, a millennial. I had her for 10 years working with me. And I have to tell you, I did invest in her personally. I did know what was going on in her life, inside and outside of work, the good, the bad, all of it, because it meant something to me. I had her for 10 years. Now, this woman did not necessarily love my line of work. She didn't want to become a person in the relationship space. She wasn't looking to be a coach. She wasn't looking to be a matchmaker. In fact, when I hired her, she kind of thought it was a little weird what we did for a living, but she stayed with me for 10 years. I had such loyalty because I built a home for her. When we don't care enough to empathize and create space for people to be human, like I did with Jamie, who worked with me, they just feel like they're just another cog in the machine. That leads to disconnection, reduced motivation, lower productivity. And the next thing I see is a lack of open communication. Now, we all get that communication is important. I don't need to tell you that. Communication is king. But what I'm talking about today is open communication. And the difference is the depth and the intent. So how I look at it is communication is information sharing, right? It's kind of more one-sided, surface level. I need to give you this information. I'm going to be very clear with what I need from you, but I'm not actually ensuring that there's going to be mutual understanding and trust when I'm just doing that level of communication. So open communication goes a step further. It's honest, it's transparent. There's a little shade of vulnerability on both sides. And its intention is creating a safe space for dialogue where we're both feeling heard and respected, and we're free to express ourselves without fear of judgment or any kind of retaliation. And as a leader, we need to be that safe space to come to, because employees don't always quit because of a toxic environment. Sometimes people quit out of a genuine longing for more. And you might have done an amazing job of creating a top-notch culture. And they like the people they work with and they admire you, but maybe they have dreams of something more and are afraid to disappoint you because they feel like they owe you for the time you put into their career. So if you're openly communicating, that means you're open to hearing feedback and at times taking your boss hat off and replacing it with your mentor hat. Because when you're in mentor mode, everybody tells you the truth. The third that is part of this lack of engagement is people aren't feeling included. They're not feeling like there's a place of belonging. And I know there's a lot of talk about inclusion. And on the surface, that's not really my lane of expertise. But what I do know how to do is include people in conversation. I know how to inspire them to take part, to show up, to be real and authentic, and give them that sense of belonging so they feel comfortable in my presence and my environment. And it's also about expressing our joy for our differences, right? The emotional connection that employees feel when they're accepted is what is real. This is what people are longing for. And what's interesting is whenever I've given somebody like the match of their dreams, and that's the person they ended up with, I always do a follow-up question of, how do you feel right now? Now that you've found your forever home, well, how does this feel? They always say, I do. That's true, April. I feel like I'm home. I feel like I found my place, and they feel peaceful. Don't we all want to feel at peace? I do. I know we all do. And adding to the lack of inclusion and belonging are three factors. We aren't working together anymore. No one really knows each other, what each other is doing. There isn't any transparency or direction. We feel like we're on the other side of the glass. We aren't celebrating each other for the work we've done to get the result and, to help people bond. A client of mine who's a CFO shared with me the other day how much he's longing to leave the company. And he's frustrated with the daily and he's frustrated with the team because he doesn't really have any connection to them. And he told me, this was actually shocking and kind of scary. He told me that there's a lot more that he could be doing for this company and things he would actually create to help them to be more successful, but he doesn't have any motivation to do it. He's just not interested in the long term, even though what he could potentially do for them is completely in his wheelhouse. So let's talk about who's doing this right. So here's a great case study for all of us. Zappos, the online retail company that we all know and love, they do a great job of looking at these issues and prioritizing human connection. So they developed a unique culture that prioritizes employee relationships and personal growth over their traditional corporate structures. And their approach kind of goes beyond the typical team building exercises. What they do is their new hires go through an intensive 4-week training that doesn't just focus on job skills, but they actually focus on connection, authenticity, and mutual respect. Wow, that's like music when I hear that. And more fascinating is they consistently rank among the top workplace cultures. Their employee turnover rates are significantly lower than industry standards. Their commitment to connection actually translated directly into business performance, their company achieving over $1 billion in annual sales. So this proves it. Workplace relatability isn't just a soft skill, it's an essential one. Don't you agree? So when we talk about loneliness and lack of engagement and low job satisfaction, I think what we're really saying is we're out of balance. So let's take a look at these 4 key factors of engagement from Gallup. I want you to take a look at these 4. What does this remind you of? So step outside of your work brain for a minute. Aren't these the same wants and needs that we crave in our personal relationships? We want our partners to meet those needs of love and trust and support, kindness. We want them to be faithful. We want them to be dedicated. We want to be valued for who we are and what we bring to the relationship. We want to be supported in our dreams and our journeys. That person to rely on that has our back. And we require communication and feedback so we stay on track with each other and that we're in the know. And all successful relationships offer the ability to grow, the growth together and the growth individually. I think of relationships as being what creates our work-life balance, because work-life balance can't be measured in your calendar. This means that we need to be more seamless with how we connect at work, in life, and love, right? So that we're not stretching ourselves to be everywhere all at once. We're going to be really in love with where we are, wherever we are. That's the key, in my opinion, to balance, because I don't think we can do anything about the hours that we work. I know I can't. I'm pulling about 60, 80 hours a week right now. So the balance I feel is my presence. Relatability is the glue, you guys. So many problems within your organization can be so easily solved through practicing this skill. Because when you have trust, good morale, collaboration, can you imagine the level of engagement you'll experience? People will want to stay. They'll have more motivation, and they won't be quietly looking elsewhere, because we all win when we're connected. So if we know the risks of not relating, we see the clear values, the upside of relating, why do you think we don't relate in the workplace? More specifically, why don't we? Why don't you see it? Whether it's your current workplace, places you've been in the past, what is stopping us from prioritizing this? Go ahead and put that in your chat feature if you can. I don't know, Trey, if that was from now, but you said fear earlier. I'd love to know, why don't we relate more at work? Okay, Trey is saying concern over being judged. Okay, I'll push that back to you. What would we be judged for if we were relating with each other? Where would the judgment come from? Vulnerability, fear of vulnerability, backlash. Isn't that fascinating? So to me, relatability makes me think of all positive, joyous things. And I'm hearing judgment, feeling vulnerable, which people attach the word vulnerable to fear, right? It means harm to a lot of people. I look at vulnerability as the plus. Judgment, backlash, overstepping hidden boundaries, Adam says. Deanna, great, yes, getting too personal at work. By the way, I love that you said that, Deanna, because the concept I want to teach isn't about being more personal at work, because you may not be ready for that. It may not be appropriate. So my concept is we don't need to be personal at work. We need to be more personable at work. We're going to show you how you can do just that. So here's what I think about what is stepping in our direction for doing more relatability. It's time, right? Time is one of the major blocks to relatability. Yes, all these other things that I'm going to help you with later, the backlash, the judgment, we don't want to cross boundaries. But a lot of the times, we just don't think we have enough time to do it, right? We don't have enough time to get to know everybody that we work with. The workday is busy. I remember a dear friend of mine who's currently going to Harvard. I used to say to him, I'm too busy, I'm busy, busy. And one day he said to me, April, every time you say you're too busy, it sounds like you don't care. I stopped saying it after that because I do care. But the beauty of relatability is that it actually doesn't require more time. It's just about being more aware of how you're spending time. And I think we can all agree we're just having way too many meetings every week. And a lot of times we're not getting enough done. But it's not about taking the time to get to know everybody in that way. It's about efficiency. It's about creating deeper connections faster so that you can all be successful together. And when we go through this work, when you're relating people with one another, honestly, it's really just your truth. There is no backlash or judgment to truth, to real relatability. So just hang in there with me for a minute, because I don't want to forget things you're giving me right now, because they're really, really important. Relatability is the solve. This is how we cure a lot of what's going on right now. Because with relatability, and the way I want to show you, quick relatability, because again, remember, we don't have a lot of time, doesn't mean you can't be meaningful. Efficiency doesn't preclude your humanity. And quality and quantity of time, because it's not measured in length, because it's about the ability, it's about the skills, right? Sorry, can we go back? I missed my slide. Let's go back. It's about your skills, right? Those relatable skills that we're talking about. The quality, it's like quality love languages, right? If you have a quality time as one of your love languages, remember, it's not about how much time you get, it's about what is going on with that time. Quality over everything. And because efficiency needs structure and a framework, this is how I think you can create meaningful conversations, regardless of how brief or remote they may be. Those of you that have talked about judgment or boundaries, backlash, vulnerability, here's how you cure this. So in order to create connection, we begin with curiosity. No one can fault you for being curious. So this just means you're genuinely interested. You're taking the focus off of yourself and you're putting it out on someone else. Then you follow that with compassion. The compassion is how you listen, how you respond. So if somebody shares something with you, are you responding with care? Are you one-upping in conversation? Or are you trying to, say, oh, I've done that. Oh, I get that. I also did this, because that's not relatability. Or are you moving too quickly so you don't see what someone is feeling? Like you're not really observing, listening, watching for tone. And then the courage part, that's twofold. The courage part is first being courageous enough to ask the meaningful questions without some of the worries that you guys have shared with me. But it's also about courage to not step away. Because whenever I go in and I do this connection framework, I can see emotion on someone's face. But the difference is I don't pack up all my toys and go home, because I'm not afraid of emotion. So whether somebody is joyous or sad or a little scared, that doesn't bother me, because it's emotion. There is no such thing as a negative emotion. They're all equal, right? So it's that transparency we're talking about. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about pandering to sensitivity in the workplace. You're just simply creating a greater awareness of your senses. That's what we're going to teach you today. We're all curious, right? Right? I mean, we're born that way. We travel, we pursue our educations, we obtain new skills and hobbies. Curiosity is natural, but conventional and emotional curiosity are kind of different. So we spend most of our time using our conventional curiosity and not enough time practicing our emotional curiosity. And we're taught at a young age that it's not appropriate to ask these deeper questions, not unless we know someone really well. It's not appropriate to do this in the workplace. But this is also why we're all failing at connection, because these old, tired rules, that status quo, it's not viable anymore. The world has changed. So we've got to change with it. Like Adam said, we've got to meet the needs of the moment. So I look at conventional curiosity, kind of that, it's sort of that polite curiosity, as a time waster at the office for you and your employees, because it actually takes longer to ask superficial questions that lead nowhere, because you got to do more of it. And you actually don't even learn anything of importance that might help you or your team. It's just like eating fast food. There's just no nutrients in it. And people can feel when your curiosity is destination oriented or journey, because one is really just about fact finding, and the other one is like, hey, they're trying to understand my priorities and my values, right? So does anybody have a question about whether or not something is a thinking question or a sensing question? I always try to think about it like, I can ask you something that keeps you in your head where you've been all day, right? So then I'm not going to be a departure. Or I can ask you something that might create a feeling in you. And that to me is where our truth lies, right? Just like in our interests that we talked about earlier, in our passions, it's not in what we're doing, it's how we're feeling when we're doing it. So as I go through the exercise, we'll do a little bit more of that as well. So you might be thinking, okay, April, this is easier than said and done. There's a lot of people that won't give you anything, right? We've met those people. We're super curious and we just get nothing, kind of like my doctor guy from MIT. There was nothing I was getting from him. So this is a fascinating, I want you to just take a quick look at this. Let me zoom in for you. Did you know that in general, people can actually run through 10 different emotions in just a 5-minute conversation? So if you look at this, what might happen in your conversations if you were able to observe or hear just one of these? Think about it as like, the diving board, right? Do you think you could get more done in shorter amount of time? Let's put this to the test for a second. The gold is not at the top of the ocean, it's at the bottom. Remember, the efficiency is not about sacrificing connection. And I want to show this to you really quick. I just emailed Deanna earlier to see if she would hop on with me and unmute, because I want to just kind of try this out with you for a second, how we do what I call the 5-minute exercise.
Hi, April.
So Deanna, thank you so much. Okay. Hi, how are you?
Hi. I'm a little nervous, I have to admit. What are you going to ask me?
Deanna, it's nothing tough. It's nothing tough, and it's nothing that you don't already know about yourself. So basically what I want to do, Deanna, is I kind of want to just show an example of a 5-minute relationship exercise. So if we can all cycle through 10 different emotions in just 5 minutes, and we're going to just make this 1 minute for the sake of time today. If you and I were at work together today, I want to show everybody how we can build something meaningful in a very short amount of time. So essentially, what is today? Thursday. So Deanna, what are you looking forward to this weekend? It's almost the weekend.
I am looking forward to an empty house.
An empty house. Are you tired?
That's a good descriptive word. Yes.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like it's harder than I think. Has there been a lot of people at your house?
Yes. Yes, it is there's a lot of people who require my time, and that's hard to juggle. And
Yeah.
as you can imagine, you want to give that time to everybody. You want to be helpful and supportive, and also, but like you said, there's no time. So this is great. Can I use this to be efficient with my support roles?
Yes, you can. Absolutely. Because if you came to me, let's say you were my support role, I'm going to hear that you take on a lot on your shoulders. I heard a little guilt in there. I heard the wanting and the desire to be with the people that you love, but I also know that there's probably just like fragmented pieces of you that you're trying to do just too much for people. So you're a lot like me, where we're balancing all the needs of our loved ones with also just really taking care of ourselves. So whatever role that we would be in, I would know like how much I could give you, how much I could put on your plate today. And it would be nice to know that you're having that kind of a weekend. So I might back off on something. I might find a different way to be with you. Thank you, Deanna. That we don't have a lot of time for more, but you guys noticed that all I said was, what are you looking forward to this weekend? That's all I said, but I could hear the tone in her voice. So if you want to take this 5-minute relationship exercise with you, I invite you to do that. Okay. So the 5-minute exercise, and I'd love to get into this more at a later date, but for now, try to invite conversation. How you can do this is, let's say you say to somebody, they went skiing. How was your ski trip? You might ask. Instead of saying that, why don't you say, what did you love the most about being in the mountains this weekend? Or instead of asking, where did you grow up? Say, what was your favorite memory growing up? Instead of what are your plans? What are you looking forward to? Do you see how this changes the conversation? So with this 5-minute exercise, I want you to just try it on your own to see what you can accomplish in a short, because remember, we're talking about time today, that relatability is the solve for time. So you invite, which is like, that is you to step to the plate. You take the focus off yourself, you put it on someone else. You begin with your emotional curiosity, because what you want to know is you want to know how that person is doing. You don't want facts. Remember, you're not on a destination, you're on a journey. You're there to connect, to learn about somebody. And then the courage is in the listening, the observing, be able to relate and share and reveal. That is part of your courage as well. So If you're curious to see more on relatability, how you're doing on your own relatability and your workplace, we developed a WorkWellLabs.com relatability assessment for you. This is a free assessment. You're going to get a report with that really just goes over your relatability with 4 categories. And I'm not talking about just at work, because I believe it has to work in all areas in order for it to work. So please feel free to share this. Just remember, when you get your report, it's just a screenshot of where you are today. The beauty of relatability is that you can always change this. You know, we're human beings. We're relating and changing new information, new things that are happening to us at all times. And that is what we would love to work on with you. So for those of you that would like to continue this conversation about the impact of relatability, how it can improve your employee engagement, whether it's a keynote or a workshop, we'd love to hear from you. You're also going to receive articles, some of the resources I mentioned today. We're at workwelllabs.com/contact us. And of course, emailing at team@workwelllabs.com. So I hope this opened your mind to just a few new possibilities and taking a few strategies with you today. And I don't know, Adam, if we are out of time for any questions, but I hope this was impactful.
I just know it was impactful, April. I don't have to guess about that. If you do have questions, then I'm going to suggest that you put them in the chat now. If you've got one, we can probably pick one out really quick. Otherwise, you can connect with April in a variety of ways, including on LinkedIn. And obviously, you can send an email, team@workwelllabs.com, with any questions. I just want to personally say there's so many aspects of what you shared today, April, that really resonated with me, and both personally as well as wanting to sort of, edify and summarize just one or two of them. The question of what's driving our passions. If you think about the people you work with, whether they're people that report to you or people that you report to, wherever that may be, really understanding, being curious, as April said, what's the passion there that underlies the interest. So it's one thing to relate to somebody on the, like we both play golf, or we both like being out in the sun, or, whatever, right? We're both morning people. Those are the kind of superficial connections that we all understand, that you're sort of, that awkwardness takes hold 5 minutes later, at the water cooler in the break room, and you just want to go somewhere else. And especially if you're not, feeling as though you know more. So to be more emotionally invested, I really thought was also like permission. And I felt like you were giving us permission to sort of tread in that area that many of us have been trained to sort of stay away from, stay clear of anything that's emotional when it comes to the workplace. So the way you reframe that, I think, was really, really key, April. And I just want to thank you so much. I'm going to look here to see if there's anything else. Thank you so much, Mark. So helpful. Yeah, exactly. You know what? I see there's a question here. Anything about distinguishing between being personal and being personable? Maybe just say one more thing about that as we wrap it up.
Yes, because, there is a lot of talk about we can't do this at work. It's not allowed, right? But I also think some of these rules and regulations have just absolutely hurt us as human beings. So if we're talking about bringing more of our humanity to the office, Deanna, what I'm talking about is personal is I'm telling you all my stories, right? Or I could share the feeling behind my stories. So telling you, this is what happened with my husband today. Here's the story, right? Which we don't want to do in work or on a date. But I could say, yeah, I went through a difficult time. I'm on the other side of this, and I'm so happy about it. So the personable is the sharing of the emotions around the story. And the personal is giving you the nitty gritty of my story, which I think it was Trey that talked about that earlier about, well, that's too weird. I might be too vulnerable, or it's not okay. There might be backlash because vulnerability is when we think we put too much of ourselves into something. But our emotions, remember the emotion wheel, we're all bonded on that. We're all connected because we're human beings. Our stories are different, but our emotions are the same. It's just happening at different times. That's the way I think we can stay safe at work.
That is a wonderful distinction. And as you said, the job of a leader in many ways is to create that safe space. I want to thank everybody for showing up. We wanted very much to keep this under an hour so that you had at least that 5 to 10 minute period between now and the next thing that you may have going on. Have a beautiful rest of your day, your evening, wherever we're finding you at this moment. And we appreciate you being a part of the WorkWell community. Thank you, everybody.